Individuals with complex PTSD are frequently diagnosed with, there you go, I'm sorry, I was ahead of myself, are frequently diagnosed with borderline or antisocial personality disorders or dissociative disorders. They very frequently are given a disorder that actually isn't the real disorder. I'm sorry I'm so passionate about it, but I have to tell you, I've seen so many kids dragged into my office, with a list of the treatment protocols and diagnoses they had that were simply not true. How many kids were medicated early on in life that actually made them into dependent on substances? And then they turn to substances when they're later on, and we're all scratching our heads. I wonder why he did that. But we put them on the substances because we didn't understand trauma. I hope you're getting my gist here. I'm sorry, it kills me. I'm telling you straight, it kills me. I'm spending a career trying to repair the damage of these children who were inappropriately diagnosed, and had we understood it to begin with correctly, what was really going on, and got them the correct treatment for complex PTSD, they would never have been on the medications in the first place, and they would have been healed. It's much a crime. These children can exhibit behavioral issues such as impulsivity, aggression, substance abuse, or sexual impulsivity. As I said before, these diagnoses, they get then diagnosed with the behavioral, the stuff that we see them doing fits some other behavioral diagnostic criteria that just isn't true. It just isn't true. They can also exhibit extreme emotions such as intense rage, depression, or panic. Here's the facts. The facts are that people suffering with complex PTSD are triggered by a mountain of different things. Can trigger them and put them into a state of rage, of disconnect, of hurt, of anger. We're going to go through exactly what those criteria are. And please forgive me if this is a little bit scholastic and boring. But you have to get this first. If you can get this in your kishkas and realize what we've done to our kids, I know what it did for me. It changes us to being apologetic and compassionate instead of judgmental and frustrated. It takes us to a different place, and we need to be in that different place. Worse still than complex PTSD is the fifth level, which is comorbid PTSD, which is in fact where they actually do have a mental disorder, where they have actually correctly been diagnosed with an emotional psychiatric diagnosis, where they have a problem on top of it. So not only do they have complex trauma from all their early experiences, and just to focus you on, I mentioned the one about learning trauma, which we'll come to later on. But we all know in our world how early sexual exposure or sexual abuse, we'll come to what that is later exactly, for children in our world, in the Torah world, how that is one of the most profoundly traumatic things that happens to a kid, not because of the maisa that was done to the child. It's not because of the event. We're not talking about violent rape like they talked about at the beginning, in the diagnosis of PTSD. We're not talking about that. But imagine if you could just put yourself in a classroom of an average cheder, Beis Medrash, Mesifta, anywhere where a Rebbe, a well-meaning, sensitive, well-meaning, passionate Rebbe is darshaning, or it could be teacher to the girls in the high schools. In the boys' case, where they're darshaning passionately to inspire the boys about Shmir Senayim and Shmir Saguf, taking every opportunity to inspire them not knowing, not realizing that a good number of boys in that classroom, on average, 20%, 1 in 5, will have been sexually abused or sexually exposed. Same thing, we'll explain that later, in their childhood. And now you've got 20% of that classroom re-traumatized every time he darshans. Every time a teacher who has a girl in her, again, same 20%, who were sexually exposed and discovered themselves to be entering they've entered that world where they see themselves, tznius is meant to be something, it's a beautiful thing, in which when a girl becomes a kala, so they introduce the other parts of her life into the world of tznius. It's not a separate world. It's not a world of tznius and there's a world of sexuality. It's not true. It's integrated into the world. It's a beautiful thing. But where a girl was sexually abused young, and now she's sitting in a classroom, hundreds of times listening to well-meaning teachers passionately extolling the virtues of tznius. Every single time that happens, this girl is traumatized again. That's complex trauma. It's hundreds and hundreds of events that turn the person off completely. They are completely shut down. The girls and boys I talk to describe the punishment. Again, I just want you to understand complex trauma. The punishments they got time and time and time again, because to cope with listening to those well-meaning drashas, they would dissociate. They would disconnect. They would withdraw into another world, only to be brutally criticized, blamed and punished for being myriad, for being rebellious, for being disinterested. I see you close your eyes every time we talk about it. Why are you so rebellious? They cope. I have kids who told me they find a spot on the wall where they stare at that spot the whole time that these things go on in an effort to block it all out. I have kids, girls who told me they put their head down and then they get screamed at for putting their head down and get thrown out the class. So one girl told me it was the best way not to be there. I just put my head down, then I get thrown out. I don't have to listen to all that. Complex trauma is thousands of events. Each one you could say, that's traumatic, that's not traumatic. But I'm going to show you in a moment what it does to the brain, what it does to the nervous system, and how it creates a traumatic reaction and disconnects that child from our Messiah, from your families, our families. Completely disconnects them. They don't feel part of it. When a Rebbe, again, I want to be very clear, I don't knock or criticize, not moisters, not Rebbes, not teachers, not at all. On the contrary, I'm always trying to support them. It's a difficult task. But so many times I mentioned to different schools, when a Rebbe darshans about Shmir Senayim and Shmir Saguf to teenage boys, you can't do that till you've said to the Bachim in the front of you, boys, some of you have been exposed inappropriately. It's pashut. It happens. What I'm about to say does not apply to you. You know who you are. Ignore what I'm saying. It's not for you. You come speak to me later on privately and we'll talk about what's your pathway. What's your journey? You have a different nisayon. I'm glad to help you. But what I'm saying now is not for you. Is that so hard? Is that so hard? But it doesn't happen, unfortunately. And the statistics tell us that about 20% of all kids in our world are sexually abused, exposed early on. And they walk into a different world. I'll talk more about this later, but I'm using this now just to help us understand complex trauma. It's not about one specific event that was life-threatening. That's traumatic, that fits their books, but it doesn't fit our. None of this stuff that our kids are struggling with, kimat, none of it fits anything that makes sense in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. And therefore the treatment is lost on these poor kids. It's up to us to understand it. And it's up to us to find the right treatment professionals who get this, who understand what this really is. Yes, there is comorbid PTSD, it's true, where there's an underlying mental illness, psychological illness, diagnosis, and it's real. It happens. Complicated. Much more complicated. But what we have to be aware of are the vast majority of the children who get diagnosed with things that aren't true, and what they're struggling with is trauma. And their reactions are not rebellious, they're surviving. They're trying to survive. They're trying to make it through the day. It's not rebellious. It's pure survival. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. He gave us a brain and a nervous system to help us survive. They're only doing what they were programmed to do. Here's our experience. What's our experience with our children? This first session goes till when? Does anyone know when this first session goes till? Is it 6? Okay, I just want to pace myself here. Our experience. So I'd like to shift it. If I had the schus to rewrite DSM, 5 yeshivish, chassidish, we'll write our version of it. So we change a lot of diagnosis. We would adjust them to be reflective to our world, so they would really talk to us. Here's what my experience is. A traumatic event is an incident or series of incidents that cause profound physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, or spiritual harm. It's nothing to do, do you notice, it's nothing to do with a life-threatening experience. There are 5 dimensions that we live in, that we bring our children up. I think I talked a little bit about this at the first Kesher Nafshi conference. What is abuse? See, abuse in our world causes PTSD. It causes trauma to our children. And the abuse plays out in these 5 dimensions. Physical abuse. We're all aware by now, I think, we should be anyway, that hitting children in this door is abusive. If anyone, again, please, let's get our, they'll quote me on this, and distort what I have to say. An insult punch to a little child who's walking near the street. When you walk out a 2-3-year-old and they go towards the street and they keep walking towards it, and you give them an insult punch, that's not a punch that hurts, it's a punch that insults them. Oh, they cry, it's gewaltig. You want that. That's healthy, it's gesund. An insult punch. Beyond that, in this door, the world we are living in, Rabbi Sai, any other hitting is abuse in this generation. The world changed. Hashini Ateba. Listen, I grew up, as a child, we got caned. Not regularly, I was a pretty good kid, but I did get caned. And we certainly got slippered in school. I don't know, anyone English here, you know what slippering was. You went up to the front of the class, you had to bend over, and they whacked you with a slipper, with a sneaker, in front of the class. Slippering, it was almost like, you're proud of yourself if you got slippered, it was like study, But we got slippered and we got, caned and we got whacked. And I want to tell you, most of us turned out just fine. And I definitely don't have traumatic memories. If I see a cane or a slipper, I run the other way because I got PTSD from it. Not at all. It was culturally normal. Today, you go to jail if you do that. Today you go to jail. Why? Because they shouldn't ever. The problem is that so many people grew up in a world where physical, control over children through punch, zwei Pech was the rule of the day. And we don't realize that in this generation, that is abusive. And if you do it enough times, you erode your child's self-esteem, and he's frightened of being punched again, and that contributes to PTSD. It's such a terrifying experience for a child today. Again, one time? Of course not. Cumulatively, yes. And so I have many kids who went through schools where they were whacked and punched and terrified of it. Terrified of it. And this is only going to get worse as the durs continue. For those of us, or those amongst us, who used punching early on with your children, you have to realize they're traumatized. That's traumatic. It takes away their... Remember we talked about how many times safe, secure, seen and soothed? It takes it away. It denies them the feeling of being safe and secure. So they lose their attachments. So we have to go back and address that. Physical abuse is a really serious issue.